My guests are seated for the conversation of mental health amongst adolescents. We have Dr. Peggy Esiedu Ekremet, who is the child and adolescent mental health specialist at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital, and Dr. Richard Lecha, who is a pediatrician, Pediatric Society of Ghana. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Before we get into the conversation for today, I believe you have secrets, don't you? Dr. Peggy, you are married.
I am married.
Is there anything that you had to confess to your husband that you were scared of?
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah.
You were open?
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Lecha, are you married?
Yes.
You're married. You've not kept any secrets from your wife?
No.
Nothing?
Not at all.
Okay, but I believe that you've encountered quite a number of patients who have had, rights. Dr. Peggy?
Yeah.
Okay. Give us an example.
Well, confidentiality.
But you're not going to mention names, so I mean, yeah, you can't mention. You don't have to mention the name. So
we deal with people on an everyday basis, and for us as psychiatrists, we have people tell us things that they would normally not tell anybody, and sometimes without their permission, we're not even allowed to disclose to the other party until they are comfortable enough to do that. Yes.
Okay. Well, it seems that Dr. Peggy is not willing and ready to share anything, regardless of the fact that... and let me just remind everybody that when you send your story, your identity will definitely be concealed, so you don't have a problem. Don't think that you're going to reveal who you are to the entire world. No, you can go on our Facebook page and watch the episode of Secrets and Confessions we started last week Thursday, where we had a course in the house for her to share her story. You can go and then listen on our Facebook page at Joy Prime without the TV. Now let's get into today's discussion. Make sure that you get interactive with us, because we are about talking on mental health in adolescents. Now, decades of research proves that, or is implying that the most or the major risk factor of mental health in adolescents and children is adverse life experiences. I know you're wondering what adverse life experiences, and that's why the experts are in the building today to explain to you what adverse life experiences are. And globally too, about 10% to 20% of adolescents and children suffer from common mental health disorders. An example is anxiety and depression. Now, I know that someone would wonder, can depression find home? Please don't think that way. I want you to get interactive with us. It's very important that you do so. Our WhatsApp line is active as well. Let me say the number again: 055-157-5757. 055-157-5757. Start sending in your questions. Dr. Peggy and Dr. Richard are here. They will answer everything in relation to mental health in adolescents for you. Doc. Hey, so both of you are right. So let's get started with earlier. What I just said, that there are a whole lot of times when you have children going through depression, but in a typical African home, it is quite difficult for children to open up to their parents about certain things that they are going through. You can't easily go to your mother and say that Obi Yemi say was school. I'm not happy with this person doing this and that to me because of how we were brought up, because of how society has just made everything. So in the first place, is there anything like depression in children or anxiety in children or adolescents in general? Yes, Dr. Peggy.
Yeah, so depression does occur in children. We've had children as young as 9 years, 10 years, being like overtly depressed. And anxiety is very common as well. Anxiety actually starts sometimes in infancy. Some anxieties are normal, like a child being afraid of the dark, being afraid of monsters, etc. But as they grow up, if it becomes too much and too disturbing for the child, and above a certain age where it's okay for them to be anxious, then it becomes a problem that we usually deal with. So these conditions are common in children.
In my introduction, I mentioned adverse life experiences, abbreviated as ALEs.
Yeah.
Can you help us understand, because I know that there are different levels to ALEs, so please help us understand. Let me come to you, Dr. Richard. ALEs, adverse life experiences.
So basically, they are life experiences that puts someone at risk of having other problems like depression that you mentioned. For instance, if you have a problem in the house, like there's conflict at home, that impacts the child's, it puts a lot of stress on the child, and that gives an adverse effect on the child, leading to depression, as you mentioned.
Okay, so at what point in a child's life do you think that certain things can start affecting the child mentally? Because like I said, sometimes the misconception that we have is that, oh, Accra was onimshe. You understand? So we end up doing things just anyhow in our homes. So at what point in a child's life do certain things start affecting them mentally?
Okay, so I think it will be difficult to put a specific age to it because children develop differently. Some develop very early where they are able to express their emotions. We have 6-year-olds who can tell you, oh, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling afraid. So once a child understands their emotions and they can start putting things together, usually we expect that maybe upper primary, getting into GHS, they're able to make enough deductive reasoning and things. But there are children who are early developers. So you may underestimate a 6-year-old, 7-year-old and say that, oh, this child doesn't understand anything, but they actually do understand things. Yeah, so once, and especially we realize that a child may be affected when you realize that their behavior has changed. Okay. So those are pointers to let you know that, oh, maybe there's something actually going on with this child. But children as early as 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds who can reason enough can be affected. Yeah.
How can a child know, how can an adolescent, let me put it this way, adolescent know that they are having mental health disorders?
Okay, so for, like you said, it's usually difficult for, many of us have been brought up not to express ourselves.
Yes.
But that is changing nowadays. But for some people, they would actually know and say that, I think this is too traumatic for me. I went to school, somebody bullied me, I'm hurt. Some people can actually know, but in other conditions, some people may not have something we call insight, like know exactly. So people around them may do, but when it comes to most of the emotional disorders, people can actually tell, children can actually tell, I'm angry, I'm moody, I'm bored. They can actually tell that they have that.
Okay, Dr. Richard, let's come to the factors of mental health disorders in adolescents.
So there are various contributing factors to mental health, like we mentioned earlier: conflict, abuse, violence, and there are some group of people who have higher risk, like people who have chronic illnesses, like children who have diabetes or sickle cell disease. They are at higher risk of developing mental health issues because sometimes the condition itself puts a lot of stress on them. Some are on medication for a long time and they are not comfortable, so sometimes that put them at risk. The other issues have to do with people who have been discriminated upon, like adolescents maybe who are pregnant and they are being discriminated upon. They have also developed, they have the risk for developing mental health issues.
So with a child going through certain health disorders, someone would say that, oh, but this is something that probably the child was diagnosed of without the child knowing that this is what you have, that you are diabetic, that you are this and that. So how can that be worrisome? Because the child being aware of himself or herself growing up, he or she can't really tell that, okay, this is a normal life that I'm supposed to be. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
No, they actually can tell. I have children tell me I feel different, especially some children who have maybe like autism or they have attention deficit hyperactivity, so that they can tell you that I feel different. I feel my friends don't want to mingle with me. And some people actually say that I'm weird, things like that. So they they know they have a problem, but you know, if you have a problem and you accept it, it's different from having a problem and being discriminated against.
Yes.
Yeah, and for children who have chronic diseases such as diabetes and things, they know because they look at other children. I'm always in the hospital. I'm always having my blood samples being taken. So why? So they ask themselves a lot of questions, and some come in frequently, they are frequently hospitalized, and they see their peers in school. Their siblings at home. They actually know that there is, even if they may not understand it too much at a younger age, they still know that something is different.
So in a situation like that, as a parent or as a guardian, what exactly can you do?
So you need to encourage the child. You know, the mindset, the way we think affects how we feel, then it affects how we behave. So if, oh, I'm always going to the hospital, oh, it doesn't matter, you are checking your thing, you'll be healthy. So the child knows that even if I'm going through a problem, I'm going to get better when I take my medication. It affects the way they start feeling about themselves. So they can be happier, have a higher self-esteem. Instead of if they were being put down or being said, you're always causing us to waste money. You know, there's no money in the system, but they always have to go to the hospital. If they feel they are being a burden, then the emotions and the behavior will follow suit. So as a guardian, it may be hard, but we try to encourage parents to at least be positive around the children so that they can imbibe into that positivity.
Is it advisable for parents, you know, who have adolescents or children to always be open about certain conditions that they are going through, certain mishaps that they are going through, negativity? Because I feel that, okay, if a child growing up knows that, okay, my mother has been crying because there's no money. My father is crying because he's been sacked from his job. Is it advisable as a parent or a guardian to make it known to your children when situations like this are happening to you? Dr. Richard?
So I will look at it in two ways. Some children may also want to help. They feel that, for instance, if you tell them that you don't have money or you are stressed with issues, they may also want to help because they are growing, they are becoming adults, so they are nearly in your shoes. So that will even push some of them into doing things to support you. But it's good in a way such that you will be able to, they will be able to appreciate what the family setting is.
Okay.
And then you can find a way to address it and not have a negative impact on them.
One thing that I've noticed is that people have a different way of relating with children who are not theirs directly. So either it's a sisters or brothers or a help that has been brought from a different town to them. Recently, a video that was trending on social media was one young girl who literally na pampe mapa because she keeps on carrying heavy loads on her head, and it's her auntie who has been, you know, sending her to do all those errands and all that. But then the video was going viral because it felt like an adult. Why would you watch a child go through this? But then it looks like the auntie has made it known to her that it is your responsibility. That is what you're supposed to do. In a situation like that, as a child, I mean, you feel like, oh, I am helping my auntie out so that money can be brought home, so that we can have food on the table, so that we can have food to eat. Because like you said, maybe if you are to let the child know, she would want to help you or she would want to help. But sometimes it is to the extreme.
Yes.
So, Dr. Peggy?
So, I mean, there's a difference between a child being helpful, doing house chores and things, and there's a difference between a child being abused. So that we need to draw the line between that. I mean, a child helping in maybe the mother's shop, sweeping and all, those are things that normally children do, house chores, but maybe a child being subjected to hard labor. We know that in the law, children below 18 are not supposed to be employed. You see children being masons, what do you call it, like doing all these kind of menial jobs. That's actually not protecting the child. It's exposing the child to all these things. So if it's child abuse, that has to be frowned upon. But if it's just being at home, helping out and all, I think that is not a problem.
A child who has been asked to help out with selling on the street, to be a hawker, or those those chat people that they will sit, the parents will sit under trees and then will be sending the children to be going to approaching cars to be asking for money here and there. Do you think that something like that could affect a child's mental health?
Yes, it does. So in a way, this child is being stressed because he has to wake up early in the morning, or he has to go back late in the night, and that puts a lot of stress on the child. And at that age, he may not be well developed to handle those stress, and that will probably tip the child into having a mental health. And as much as we think about mental health as well, we should think about the other injuries that these children are likely to have. Being knocked down by a car, or being depending on where they live, if they are not if they don't have a good directions, or they don't have a good link to their house, they can actually even be raped or been abused. So it put them at higher risk.
There are quite a number of success stories that when you hear, the one thing that mainly cuts across almost all these success stories are, they went through hardship from childhood. They were subjected to hard labor from childhood. They had to live with an extended family member. They had to do this, do that. And they always bring a but at the end of the day, it made them strong. You hear success stories like these, and then it feels like, then it looks like it has to be normal if you are to go through certain hardships. So, it will gradually give you that opportunity for you to be tough in life, in society, for you to be strong.
Not necessarily. There are things that we call risk factors. Dr. Richard mentioned some, so poverty, adverse life effects, etc. But there's also something we call resilience. So resilience is sort of like a positive adaptability in the face of traumatic events, or in the face of harsh conditions, or adverse life events like that. So people react differently. So somebody may actually be able to adapt positively and overcome these hardships. That is when it makes them tougher, it becomes a success story. But most of the time we don't hear the other part of it. Or we do, but we don't often hear that, because people already, maybe because of their personality, there are people who may be reserved, they can't take, they worry a lot. So the slightest thing tips them in a different so coping mechanisms are important factors that determine whether somebody will actually succumb or may come out better.
So how would you advise these people who want to share their success stories to be telling stories like that, especially to children? They go to senior high schools and they are giving life, they are not like life coaches, they are giving counseling and then all that.
No, it's important for those stories to be shared as well, because you never know who you would encourage in that group.
Okay.
There could be somebody who is almost on the verge of, giving up. But somebody hears that story and that person decides that, I won't go down, I'll rather come up. We as health workers, we usually use some of our clients who have conditions as advocates. It's the same as like the success story you're talking about. So they come, they say, I was depressed, I was anxious, but I got some therapy, I got some medication, I got a support group, and now I'm doing well. So those are important, but I guess we still would have to work on those who have a lot of risk factors that may go down to bring them up to that point.
Dr. Richard,
yes, ma'am.
I know that you would say that for confidentiality of your patient's sake, but I want to ask you, you're a pediatrician, I want to ask a certain situations that you've had to encounter in relation to children who are going through certain things mentally. Can you share some with us? For the sake of the conversation. Please do.
So I've actually not had a lot of experiences with children with mental health issues. But like I rightly mentioned, we try to help children who have chronic illness. so that they don't actually go into those areas, because we know that the stress of the disease and then what they go through in terms of being admitted, having to stay out of school and all those things puts a lot of stress on them. So we try as much as possible to help them so that they don't go into they don't have those mental health issues.
So how exactly do you help them?
So by counseling.
Okay.
So we counsel them and counsel their parents as well. So you talk to them about the disease, what they should expect, and then how they should relate. And in terms of those who are taken out of school because of the illness, whilst they are on admission, they have certain facilities have teachers that teach them and that engage them. So they are not away from school, as in, even though they are away from school, they have some education going on. So that also helps them. And sometimes we try also to involve their peers as well, to be able to encourage them, so that they know that they are not alone. Yes, they are not alone, and they are also not away from school.
Okay, Dr. Peggy, I want to ask, see, you have to give me some scenarios, so if you have to cook up something for me for the sake of the conversation, because we really want to understand what mainly goes on around us, and we're going to get to even how, if there are data that have been collated in relation to the number of cases of mental health in Ghana amongst adolescents.
Okay, so in Ghana, we don't have so much data, but the WHO does a lot of collations from the country. So we know that adolescents are aged 10 to 19. Children under law is from up to 18. But we know that every 1 in 5 children and adolescents will have a recognizable and treatable mental health condition. That's how
recognizable and treatable
mental health condition.
Okay.
Then every 1 in 7 adolescents also has that recognizable and treatable condition, but the number that goes for treatment is not the best. We know that the treatment gap in Ghana is like over 90%. So over 90% of people in Ghana are not getting treatment for their mental health condition, because maybe they are not coming, or they've been sent to prayer camps and other things. But children do have problems. At the height of COVID, when we're all staying home, etc., we had a lot of children come in, some anxious, some depressed, because one child told me, "My mother doesn't like me." Yes, I see the way my mother relates to my younger sibling.
Right.
I feel my mother doesn't like me, and this child was depressed. There are other people, their parents are going through a divorce. So you may think that children don't see, but they see everything. You may fight, your facial expressions, they pick those signals up. And you usually say that a child is the eye into the family. So the parent, you're having your own personal problems, but the child is carrying that burden. So you have children internalizing those things and coming and saying that mommy and daddy are fighting, I don't want to be alone, I don't want them to go, I want to live with both of them. We can have things like that. And we even have cases where children are being sexually abused in their own houses. And mommy, daddy don't know.
Right.
And at times it's a family member. It makes it quite difficult to deal with these, but a lot is going on that I always say that we shouldn't underestimate children. They pick up signals. They may not say it, but they would internalize it.
So in a situation where maybe you've trained your child in such a way that your child isn't vocal, and then now you want to establish a very smooth and quite often communication with this child, but you can tell them, maybe like you mentioned earlier, the demeanor of the child has changed, so there's probably something going on with this child. How can you as a parent or a guardian overcome this? How can you break that barrier that you yourself built?
It takes time. I mean, it's never too late to start to correct anything. But I would advise that right when children are young, we should encourage them to speak. I wasn't a child who used to talk a lot, but I tried to make sure that my daughter doesn't follow the same So when we were sitting in the car, I asked her about her day. I asked them, so if you say I should write the register in her class, I can actually write a lot of names. So I encourage my children to talk a lot because, well, maybe because of what I see, I want to prevent that in my own home. So I try to get them vocal. So I think parents should just try as much as possible. Even if you didn't start initially, there's still room for you to change.
It's not too late.
It's not too late, yes. At least be with them, play some games, because they want you to be involved in their day-to-day life. So play some games, be more involved in the homework. Because when the child realizes that you are coming close, that's when they may also decide to open up. So it's never too late to get close to a child.
Okay. So earlier you said that there isn't a, an exact data in relation to mental health in adolescents, but with the numbers that you've picked up so far, which stage of adolescence would you say that they are at a higher risk of mental health disorders?
So which age?
Yes, which stage? So do we have, let's say, teenagers or what age range, if that should put it that way, in adolescence?
Okay, so I think everybody is at risk, because everybody, and puberty now starts to occur earlier than we used to, because when there's a lot of hormonal changes, now they're trying to form their own identity, they start becoming sexually attracted to each other. That's a stage where a lot of changes happen. So around puberty and things, we ought to be more conscious of them, because that's when people start taking a lot of risk. So there's a lot of risk taking. Or somebody sees a cigarette, somebody smoking, they want to try it. So even if I wouldn't put an age, or maybe I would say maybe like middle adolescents.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe from like 13 going, we should pay more attention. But I think that we have 9-year-olds menstruating now. So
yes.
Putting a caveat on it becomes
quite difficult.
Yes. Okay. Children are developing quite early.
Okay. Now I want us to come to substance abuse, because I know that it's one aspect that a lot of these adolescents are beginning to engage in now. Unfortunately, it's rather unfortunate. Now let's come to the severity of they involving themselves and being affected mentally by this. Dr. Richard.
So mental substance abuse is a big issue, and they are now abusing even normal prescription medications, as we see tramadol.
Yes.
There's stories about abuse of tramadol in recent times, and it's a big issue. So the moment you go into these things, you are either affecting your body, which you may affect your liver, you may have your kidneys being affected, depending on the amount and the duration of use. It may also affect you mentally in terms of the effect on the drug in your brain, because some of these drugs they work in the brain. So if you are abusing them to the effect that the brain cannot get used to, then it becomes too much for you. Sometimes they become the issue about withdrawal, in terms of you have used a drug for a long period of time and the body gets used to it, and you are not getting it, then that also becomes an issue.
I was going to get to that, because earlier you mentioned some of the treatments that stages that you go through with children is you counsel them and then you give them their own medication and then all that, but then at a point where the body becomes so used to these medications that maybe you would have to end up, reducing the quantity or stopping this particular medicine that you're taking, but then you can't. Is there anything like that in children or adolescents?
Are you talking about in terms of prescription medication?
In terms of that.
Okay, so in terms of prescription medication, once you're controlling a condition and the person is okay, you are able to come down to tolerable or minimum effective doses that can control the condition. There are certain conditions which are a bit chronic.
Okay.
So maybe diabetes, you have to be on the medications. But when it comes to maybe say depression in a child, usually if the child is mildly depressed or moderately, we actually don't give medication.
Oh.
It's psychotherapy. So you go through a lot of intensive psychotherapy, but if it's severe, we start medication. But medication is not lifelong. Once the child gets better, you continue for a while, you decrease and you stop. So there are certain conditions in children that we actually don't treat throughout all their lives. We actually stop for some people. But if it's in terms of substances of abuse,
Yes.
that becomes a problem, because some people may just use a substance of abuse recreationally, or maybe on occasions. I go to a party, I go to a wedding. That one is not.
Do you know that now, like the helium in balloons is now becoming a thing for a lot of people?
Yeah. And even laughing gas, I hear the skeleton canisters and all. It's people are using all sorts of, even mixtures.
Yeah.
The recent one we heard about was sanitary pads.
Sanitary pad?
Yes, fresh sanitary pad. People are burning to inhale to get high.
But what's in there?
I have no idea whether it's the rubber or, but people are, there are a lot of things that give people a high. Even sanitizers.
The alcohol?
Yes. And you know hand sanitizers have a higher alcohol percentage than the usual 5%, 13%, 40% in the vodkas and things. So,
I heard about super glue as well.
Yes. Even paints. People sniff super glue, paint, yes. And it gives them a high.
What can we do to stop this? what can we do? Because I know that there are quite a number of adolescents who are engaging in these as well. And the need to want to also be successful in life is becoming a thing amongst the youth now. Adolescents wanting to, be comfortable quick. So if they are trying to go by these means and it's not working, okay, they'll follow a friend to do this and do that. There are so many things that are contributing to all of this. But at the end of the day, this substance abuse thing, the examples that you just mentioned, what you just said, sanitary pad, I had never heard of it before, which is very alarming. I had never heard of it before. What can we do? What can guardians do? What can parents do?
So basically, education. So guardians have to, we said it earlier, they have to have a good communication with their children so that they can actually know the problems they are having and how best to address them. And also, some of these things normally may be happening in the communities or may be happening in the schools. So you should be able to follow up your child as to getting report to what is happening to your child in school, what your child is doing in school, and even in the community. And that way, that will guide you on how to link up with your child. And communication, good communication at home. Your child will be able to tell you what they are going through, their difficulties, and you can help them address those problems earlier than letting them hear or get support from other peer group who are already indulging some of these things.
What are some of the kinds of mental health issues you often get?
Okay, so we have a myriad. Usually, maybe I'll start with the ones that we co-manage with the pediatrician. So we have certain conditions called neurodevelopmental conditions. So autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity. Those are the children who are like all over the place. They are always jumping. They can't sit still, etc. Intellectual disability, what we used to call mental retardation. We find some in children who grow up to become adolescents. But we see children who are depressed, who are anxious, who have anxiety, who have bipolar disorder. We have children with psychotic conditions. So psychosis is simply put, being out of touch with reality. So maybe,
psychosis?
Yes, that's the simplest way I can explain it. But maybe, for example, hearing voices of people talking to you when there's nobody around, seeing things, smelling things that are not there, maybe believing people want to harm you or are talking about you. Those are examples of things. But we have children also self-harming. So maybe cutting themselves or maybe even attempting suicide. I think recently your sister, they did a documentary on childhood. So yeah, those are some of the conditions that we have, as well as substance abuse, yes. Especially in our SHS and things, we have children come with problems related to...
I really want to know what causes a child to get to that level of mental health, wanting to hurt yourself, start hearing voices? Is that, you know, something that is hereditary or something? But before you answer that, viewers, we are talking about mental health in adolescents, and so please get interactive with us on our social media platforms. Go on Facebook and type Joy Prime, go into the comment section and send in your questions. Our WhatsApp line is on the screen currently. It's 055 157 5757. 055 157 5757. Send in your questions in relation to the topic that is being discussed today. I have seated with me Dr. Peggy and Dr. Richard, who are giving us insights into mental health in adolescents. Dr. Peggy, let's continue. I want to know because it's weird, if that's how I should put it. That's the best word I could give this right now.
So it's an interaction of biological factors, psychological factors, social factors. And so biologically, certain mental health conditions can run in families. Okay. Like the way hypertension can run in families, diabetes, so people are predisposed to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Other times there are other risk factors, like we've mentioned. So a child is abused physically, sexually, maybe a child is exposed. Children who experience war, they're at a higher incidence of getting that. Poverty is, you know, it's underlies almost any and everything.
Of it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to the family settings, so harsh parenting, parental divorce, the death of a loved one, all those things rank high when it comes to risk factors for a child getting this. Even being bullied at home, being bullied at school is also a risk factor that may make a child predisposed to having a mental health problem.
Is helping children experiencing these conditions difficult to handle? Dr. Richard?
Well, I think sometimes.
Sometimes?
Yes, sometimes.
In what?
Because even as adults, it's difficult when you are dealing with certain stress issues. So comparing that to a child who is yet to understand what is going on in their system, what they are going through, and having to feel that the other colleagues are not having the same thing. So sometimes it's difficult for them. And like she rightly said, they don't use medicines for the mild cases and moderate cases. So you can understand that due to this those situations, it makes it also difficult for them because they have to go through sections of education, sections of counseling and all that. So I think sometimes it can be difficult.
Have you had cases where you've seen improvement in a child's condition mentally, then all of a sudden there's a relapse? Have you had such situations?
Yeah.
Quite a lot, I believe.
Yeah, we have some conditions, and surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, some are linked to things that happen at home. So I'll give you an example. So a child who had a psychotic condition then later becomes depressed because of what is going on between mommy and daddy. We struggle, get the child admitted, child gets well, is with mommy, is okay, then goes back home to visit daddy. Daddy has a new, I don't know whether to say wife or a new girlfriend or something, and the child relapses and comes back in a state that after we had struggled so long. So that's an example of what happened
in a situation like that, when there's a relapse, it could even be worse than how it was before.
Yes, it actually was a bit, for that particular person, a child I was talking about, it was actually worse than the beginning. And initially we weren't picking up until she started telling us. So then we had to concentrate more on the home situation, try and solve it to make her better. So like he said, sometimes it's difficult because some children may not talk. We are not in the home, so we may not know what is going on. So until we get that information to make things easier, sometimes it can be difficult managing.
Okay, right. But can a child pretend to be okay in the process of treatment?
Well, I've not really encountered such experiences before, but it depends. For instance, if there's a problem at home and the child want to help, they can actually pretend that maybe they are not better, so that to find a way of putting things together. If they think that that is going to help the situation.
Okay. Briefly, unfortunately, well, we will have to run off this conversation, but then we have some comments. Let's read them. I'm in trouble within. I believe I'm still an adolescent, even at the age of 20. Okay.
She's not in trouble.
That's not trouble.
No.
Okay. So, okay, one more comment. Let's read that. Hi. Should a child with epilepsy take medication for his lifetime? Thanks. Should a child with epilepsy take medication for his lifetime?
So, all right. So basically, with epilepsy, you are being monitored with your medication. So you are confirmed, the diagnosis is confirmed, you are put on a medication, and then you are being monitored. So actually, if you go 2 years without having a seizure or having episodes, then your drugs are actually being started. They start tapering your drugs off and actually wean you off your medication if you go 2 years without episodes of seizures.
Okay, so very briefly, how can we help adolescents thrive in such situations? In situations of mental health disorders. Dr. Peggy, let me start with you.
Okay, so it starts from the home, starts from school, comes to the community. So we need to help build them to become resilient adults. Infuse some positivity in them, encourage them to speak up when things are not going right. And like we said, education, because if you don't know about it, you may encounter it and not know that I'm actually going through something. So we need to do that. Schools also have to invest in having a counselor, because an adolescent may feel comfortable speaking to a counselor instead of the parents. That's fine once they get some help. So we can do some of those to help them thrive.
Okay, Dr. Richard?
Okay, so as she said, education.
Yeah.
We also want to say that Pediatric Society of Ghana is hosting a national forum on adolescent health and well-being coming Wednesday.
Okay.
And it's actually putting together stakeholders in the care of in healthcare professionals, and then adolescent groups as well, and diabetic group, sickle cell group, to actually discuss issues with regard to adolescents, and then identify the gaps that are there, and then find a way of breaching those gaps.
Okay, that's really great. Okay, so the earlier comment about I believe I'm an adolescent even at the age of 20, she continued, and it says, well, I was exposed to pornography at a very tender age, and ever since then I've never been the same. If it eventually lured me into masturbation, and so now I'm finding it difficult too. I feel guilty and get depressed immediately. I do the act, and that has actually affected me mentally. I feel like. Okay, so he feels so. I believe so. Well, the gentleman says he needs help. That's the next comment that he sent, that he does need help. But he feels like this act has affected him mentally. Dr. Peggy.
So I think that he can get in touch with me after the show. I can leave a number, then we can
definitely please
pick it up from there, where he can have some counseling to help him through it.
Okay, so please give the number.
Oh, on
yeah.
I would give you a
okay, so we give it to him personally. Dr. Peggy doesn't want any disturbance. That's fine. So, but then there's definitely a hotline that people can call for help in relation to this.
Yes, there's a hotline. Let me get a number.
Okay.
If Mental Health Authority has a suicide helpline, that one is a toll-free line. That's 0800 678 678. For those who want to reach me on my work line, is 059 937 9011.
Can you please repeat the number?
059 937 9011.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Dr. Peggy, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Rachel, thank you as well. Viewers, thank you for being a part of the Good Living segment right here on Prime Morning. Our topic for discussion today was mental health in adolescence. I hope you've learned a lot. And if you are struggling with anything at all, please, the number that Dr. Peggy put out there, you can contact them and then you seek help. And just to reiterate that we have started a new series right here on Prime Morning, and it's called Secrets and Confessions. We want to help you, ease off that burden that is you're going through because of something that you're keeping, some trauma that you might have been through since childhood, and it's affecting your relationships now, it's affecting your work ethics, it's affecting you in general. We want to help you right here on Prime Morning, and so you can share your story with us. The WhatsApp line will be put on the screen. Well, let me give you the number. It's 055-157-5757. 055-157-5757. Share your story with us. There will be experts in the house for us to delve into these stories and give you the needed help. All right. Okay, so that's it for the Good Living segment right here on Prime Morning. My name is Esiedua Akom.